Scott. Craig is the CEO. I fished with him at Randy. Let me welcome everyone that's online and in the chamber to the 22nd day of September 2020 Weber County Commission. Pleasure having you either online or in the chamber. I'm Commissioner Gage Furr. I'll be chairing this morning. To my right, Commissioner Jim Harvey, and to my left, Commissioner Scott Jenkins. We're going to start our meeting this morning with a Pledge of Allegiance given by Charlie Ewert. Our invocation this morning will be given by Commissioner Harvey. I'll give the thought of the day, and then we will be open for public comments. Let's go to that point. Charlie?
Please stand with me and repeat the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our Heavenly Father, as we bow our heads today to start this commission meeting, we give Thee thanks for this opportunity, the privilege of living in a free land. We're grateful, Father in heaven, for what we enjoy. We're grateful, Father in heaven, for the coming together that the windstorm brought us and watching people truly care for one another. Father in heaven, we're grateful for the work here from our staff and how they genuinely try to help those to do business here within this county. We're grateful, Father in heaven, for family. We're grateful for the opportunity to meet together and to go through this process. We pray, Father in heaven, for those who have caused to mourn through tragedy or other circumstances. We ask a blessing on our armed forces, on our public service for servants, and also especially those who are in need of divine intervention. We're grateful again for what we have and ask that Thou will help guide our decisions today so that they will be in the best interest of the people of whom we serve. This is our prayer. We ask in the name of the Savior, even Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. So, thought of the day, Commissioners. I've got a couple of thoughts, actually, both of them fairly short. The first one, as I was talking with my granddaughter last night and getting suggestions what she thought would be appropriate, she brought up some of the national events for today. Not too many of them made sense other than National Voter Registration Day. And I thought that that was an important item to bring up, and especially with our own clerk auditor here, Ricky Hatch. Now's the time to get out and register to vote. I also would note that on a national basis, and Ricky, feel free to chime in here, we're short of poll workers, and not just in Weber County, but across the country. And why is voter registration so important? I think we all know as elected officials that voting is a privilege. We are honored to have that here in the United States. And I've always said that if you don't take the opportunity, the time to vote, then you probably shouldn't have the opportunity to complain. So that might be a little harsh, but I firmly believe that. Ricky, do you want to weigh in on National Voter Registration Day? This is your bailiwick. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for bringing that up. I appreciate that. It is National Voter Registration Day, which is a great day for election officials and for voters nationwide. In fact, yesterday, our office processed over 1,000 voter registrations, and that we have to touch every single voter registration. And so our staff of four people processed an average of 250 apiece. And today we're back up to another 200 to 300 voter registrations, and it's been that way for 2 months. So kudos to our election staff for handling such a high volume of registrations. One of the main reasons why registration and early registration is so important in Utah is because we mail out a ballot to every active registered voter. Utah is a by-mail state, and that makes it crucial that the voter roll is accurate and current. Now, we do a lot of work to make sure it stays current, but for people who haven't registered to vote and wait until the last minute, that becomes a problem because we need to get you a ballot in the mail. So, and sometimes that can take up to a week depending on where you live. So the goal is to get registered or verify your registration now. We are just today sending the first voter registration file to our printer so that ballots can be sent out in early October. So it's just really important to make sure your voter registration information is current so we can get the ballot to you at the right address, and so you don't have to come in person on election day and stand in line and expose yourself and others to risk. We would like to keep those lines as short as possible for those who really need it. And this year, we encourage you to stay home and stay safe and vote from home this year.
Thank you, Ricky. Appreciate that. My second thought, Commissioners, if you might indulge me, deals with the financial health of Weber County. And just this morning, I was notified before coming down to here and met with our treasurer, Mr. John Bond, that the refunding on the animal shelter bond was completed as of this morning. Now, what does that mean? When I signed paperwork last week to basically put this in the hands of the financiers, we have a current interest rate prior to today of about 3.5%. After today, starting right now, we have an interest rate of about 1.1% on that approximately a $2 million bond for the animal shelter. So what does that mean for the taxpayers of Weber County? It means this, that net present value of that savings, in other words, what we actually can recognize today, net present value, as we all know what that means, is $170,000. That's about a 9.6% rate of return, which is a pretty good rate of return today. So I just wanted to give thanks to our financial people. Again, you'll have to indulge me. I kind of take the financing. I spent too many years in school looking at balance sheets and profit and loss, so it kind of comes back to me, whether I like it or not. But our finance people, Scott and John, to make this happen. And this morning, Commissioners, we're going to hear about possible refunding another bond, so of an either greater savings. So this means that the taxpayer of Weber County, that we're using these funds for purposes that would normally be used with general tax dollars, so we can have a savings. And I think that's very important to show that our financial health, our stability in the county is AAA, above average, A+, AAA rating actually. So we can be proud of that. So that's my thought, Commissioners. Appreciate that. Let's go to public comments. Anybody that would like to come forward and speak to the commissions, now is your opportunity. Stacy, do we have anybody online with a comment? Please, looks like we have some, we've got a taker. Please come up and just give us your name if you wouldn't mind.
I hate being first. Don Hall, West Haven City. One of the course of human events, it becomes necessary that we, the people, thank our elected officials. And to let you know, I appreciate it. I got one of these Weaver Cares grant letters in the mail, and a couple days later, got a nice check.
Good for you.
And to be honest with you, we were on the brink. We were just about ready to close the doors. It's a one-person company. Myself, I do consulting and auditing for quality, environmental, and health and safety. Required to do on-site visits and verify the companies are doing what they say they do, so they get certain certifications to be able to do business domestically as well as internationally. And because of the virus restrictions on travel and companies closing their doors or going out of business, put a real bind on my company. And like I said, we were on the brink of having to do something else. And so certainly appreciate that check. Not completely out of the woods yet, but it is helping us to get to where we have a little bit of capital to work with and pay some bills and pay our wages. So I know that maybe this is not something you guys get all the time, to have somebody come up here and give a positive comment, but I certainly appreciate looking at some of your core values here, how they affected me, and just keep up the good work. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Your company and companies like yours, sir, are the very reason that that we put this program together, and it's very refreshing to hear. We had a lot of emails. We haven't had a lot of personal face-to-face, so we do appreciate that, and people in this room helped stand that program up, and I'm so happy to hear that it helped you. And I know that's helped a number of others. So.
Yeah, we've been in business for 21 years, and it would have been a shame to have to shut it down. So we appreciate, when I say we, our family, and I'm the one that puts the bread on the table, and so our family appreciates what you've done. And like I said, we're not completely out of the woods yet, but we're much closer to the valley than what we were before. So appreciate it.
Thank you. Best of luck to you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Hall.
Mr. Jenkins?
We just want to thank you. It's not often you have somebody come thank you, so it's refreshing. Thanks.
Thanks again. Anybody else? Stacy? Thanks again, sir, for coming up. I don't see anybody else that's approaching the podium, so we're going to go ahead to our consent agenda, commissioners. So what we'd like to do is do consent items. I'm going to start with F1, request for approval of warrants 3077 through 3092 and 452783 through 452911 in the amount of $2,929,675.36. 2, request for approval of purchase orders in the amount of $154,780.13. Request for approval of minutes for the meeting held on September 15, 2020. 4, request for approval of new business licenses. 5, request from the Weber County Fleet for approval to surplus 11 vehicles. 6, request from Human Resources for approval of Skillsoft Percipio training contract renewal. And 7, request for approval of retirement incentive window, which would be from January 1st, 2021 through July 1, 2021. Commissioners, comments, questions on the consent items?
No questions. Most of the big items that I've noticed were payment through the transportation fund through the WACOG piers.
I agree. Commissioner Jenkins, anything?
Yeah, I do want to make a comment. Couple of things here. Number one, you'll notice a loader on there from Cat Wheeler, and they came in and took our loader that we had in trade and took this, and even though it shows $88,000 in there, it ended up being just a couple of thousand that we actually paid. So that was a really good deal. This fleet, of course, that's just natural rotation of trucks and vehicles that come through. So that's to be noticed. Finally, I've never approved a retirement incentive. This is the first time for me. And I always thought it was a little crazy to do. Why should you incentivize one group of people to retire early over another group, But from a business point of view, and that's how we're trying to run this county now, the three of us, we've kind of committed that and worked really hard at it. The savings of this retirement is over $1 million. And that's money that goes right back into operating the county and paying employees. And it's pretty good reasoning behind doing it. Now, we were talking just this morning, John Watson out at the transfer station, and he's got some guys that he's paying $14 and $15 and $16 to run this equipment, and he was just telling us that he can't get people to come in and apply. Our wages are just too low out there, and that is the case. They are too low. We are being affected by these guys that he's hiring are competing against the construction trades people. So they're machine, heavy equipment operators, and it's just hard to get and maintain those guys out there. So I know we're going to deal with this when we get to our budget hearings this year. But anyway, this retirement window will actually help us in that. And so I'm grateful for that. So I just wanted to make a mention of that, Mr. Chair. And with that, if you're ready,
I'm ready.
I will make a motion that we approve consent items F1 through 7 as presented to us today.
Thank you. I have a motion from Commissioner Jenkins.
Second, with hoping to hear from Ricky Hatch.
Yeah, before I place that, we have a second, Commissioner Harvey. Before we place the motion, I'm going to go to Ricky Hatch for any explanation.
Thank you, Commissioners. We issued 10 purchase orders this week for $155,000. 57% of that amount, or $88,000, was for the Roads Department for that loader that Commissioner Jenkins mentioned. 18%, or $28,000, is for the Conference Center. That went towards will go towards a cooling tower repair and replacement. And then 15%, or $23,000, is for the transfer station, primarily for hazardous waste disposal, but also some emergency staffing. As far as checks, we issued 148 checks for $2.9 million. 27% of that amount, or $784,000, is medical insurance for employees. 25%, or $733,000, is the road construction, the WACOG funds that Commissioner Harvey mentioned earlier. That was mostly for 12th Street West and 5500 South. 17%, or $490,000, was for the transfer station, and that was primarily disposal costs. And then we had two items for 7%, or around $200,000 each. One was corridor preservation, purchasing land in North Ogden at 400 or 450 East. And then, as Commissioner Jenkins mentioned, trucks and vans for the sheriff and Zamboni for the ice sheet through our fleet department.
Thank you. Is that all, Ricky?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Before I place the motion, I just want to thank our Human Resources Director, Sarah Swan. She spent numerous hours with her staff putting together this retirement incentive. And I'm like you, Commissioner Jenkins, this is the first incentive I've approved. But looking at the numbers, looking again at the financial benefit in ongoing funds that we can use for other purposes, this makes sense. So with that, I'll place a motion. All those in favor say aye.
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 Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Let's go to action items G1. Consideration for adoption of a resolution authorizing the issuance and sale of not more than $28,700,000 aggregate principal amount of general obligation refunding bonds and related matters. And we have with us Mr. John Bond. Mr. Bond, thank you for being with us. Congrats on the last refunding. I use the term refinance, but I understand that's the wrong term. So time's yours.
Good, thank you. We've got a wonderful finance team I get to work with, Ricky and Scott, and our attorneys come through, Chris and Cortland. We've also got outside counsel that we get from our financial advisor, Jonathan Ward, who's here from Zions Bank, and Gilmore Bell's our bond counsel for attorney work, and Blake Wade and Randy Larson there help us a tremendous amount. What I'd like to do is just give you a brief summary of where we are. We've got 6 bonds that we're working with right now for county that we've funded different activities with. They are the animal shelter, the health department building, the ice sheet, the Pleasant Valley Library, and the expansion on the library, the GO bond for the library services that we did in 2013 were made up of 2 bonds. One for $34 million and one for $11 million. So that was the $45 million bonds that we started back in 2013. We're also connected with a Summit Mountain bond for their assessment area up there, and then dispatch. So we are involved in those 2 also. But of the 6 bonds that we're directly involved with, over the past couple of months, we've directly attacked those 3 to figure out how 3 of those 6 The library, in context, the 45 million makes up about 84% of our debt. So that is where we are right now with our debt structures. The two library bonds that we did, the general obligation, are about 84%. We're keying that up in about 2 weeks to go back to Fitch, who is our rating agency that provided us the AAA bond rating. We reaffirmed that this spring. There's a little over 70 counties out of 3,000 in the nation that Fitch has provided a AAA bond rating to on their GO bonds. So in context, we're one of 72 counties out of 3,000 nationwide that have the highest credit rating available. We're going to meet with them in a couple of weeks, and we are working hard to reaffirm that AAA bond rating status again. About a month ago, we came to you and we wanted to, because we have IRS regulations we have to follow, as well as we look at market conditions, we are in a position right now to work on 3 of our bonds. A month ago, we came to you and presented the animal shelter refinance, and we closed that this morning and obtained, as Commissioner Farrar mentioned, a 1.1 interest rate on that this morning because of market conditions and the IRS regulations that allows us to refinance or refund it at this point. Today, in this meeting, we'd like to address 2 other bonds. One is the Pleasant Valley Library bond. One is the first bond on the GO bond for the library that was for $34 million. I'd like to just basically introduce those and then ask Jonathan Ward to come and give us a little bit of detail on how that is coming along. But as I said, the animal shelter is done as of this morning. We got a wonderful rate for that 1.1. What we're doing with today's agenda items is the $28 million is the first library bond, and the second matter is the defeasance, or the plan that we have to defease or basically pay off the Pleasant Valley Library bond. Over the last 2.5, 3 years, our finance team has aggressively tried to address 3 bonds and pay them completely off. We were successful in getting a bond for the flood control paid off of $5 million. We had a 12th Street construction bond for about $10 million. We completely paid off. We've increased our liquidity over the last 2 years to put the county in a really strong financial position, which has helped us this current year. And today we plan on starting or activating the plan of paying off the Pleasant Valley Library bond in the next few weeks. With that in mind, I'd like to ask Jonathan Ward to come by and just provide us a little bit more detail on each of the 2 bonds that we're talking about today, the defeasance for the Pleasant Valley, paying it off, as well as the library bond. And,
Great, thank you.
That.
Thank you, John. Welcome.
Thanks, Commissioners.
Appreciate
Nice
you
to be
being with us.
Yeah. Right now, we're looking at very low interest rates, and so as the finance team considers what options there are and how to save money, we've tried to take a stab at that. And on the one hand, borrowing at very low interest rates is a great thing to do. We don't typically extend the debt, so on the 2013 bonds for the library, we would maintain the same footprint, if you will, the same term, but just try to refinance and save on the interest costs that the ratepayers here in the county pay. We are looking at about a 1.5% interest rate for the remaining 14 years. It saves just about $2.3 million on a net present value basis. We are at, again, like I said, a very low interest rate environment with a lot of supply coming to market between now and the election. If there's, as one underwriter who's in the markets all day, every day, it seems, every week, indicated recently, if you change, well, he just said, it's amazing what politics does to financial markets. If you change the representation in the White House, if you change representation in the House, if you change representation in the Senate, you know, where does that leave the markets and everybody's expectations? There's enough running to the markets right now that we're seeing a pretty aggressive increase in municipal bond supply. That typically then means interest rates go up unless the demand is there to gobble it up. And it's been a very it's been a really high demand market since about May, as we start to come out of a lot of the COVID lockdown. People start getting involved in the investments again. But we do envision that there will be a huge supply. Right now we're around $13 billion on what's called the 30-day visible supply, meaning what's coming to market. I would not be surprised if that increases closer to 20 billion as we progress towards the election. Our intent is to be in the market on the 29th of October. That's the week before the election. If we can do it a week ahead of that, we'll try to do that as well. It's probably not practical given the amount of work rating agencies have to do and what they're seeing on their side, and we have to wait until all those pieces can fall into place before we actually get into the market. But that's sort of where we stand on that one. The bad thing about really low interest rates is that when the county has cash, it's not earning very much. And when you want to defease some of the bonds outstanding, the 2014 B bonds, it's going to sit in an interest-bearing escrow for the remainder of those bonds that while they're outstanding. You'll pay them off technically and legally. They'll be escrowed and they'll be done. But we won't be able to earn a whole lot of interest in that escrow because interest rates are so low. So there's the other side of the coin. But it's nice to get out of debt. It's nice to manage your debt. The county's done a phenomenal job maintaining very solid debt ratios, and as Mr. Bond indicated, having one of the AAA ratings that Fitch gives out across the country is real kudos to you as a county. Any questions on that?
Yeah, one question, just so I understand. So the Pleasant Valley Library, even though that won't be paid off as we place that money in escrow, in terms of our balance sheet, it's paid off.
It's done.
So as anybody looks at the financial standing of the county, that bond does not show because the funds are in escrow, therefore it's wiped off the books.
Exactly correct.
Okay, thank you. Other questions, commissioners?
So, may I?
Go ahead.
So the savings then that are projected are real savings?
On the refinancing, absolutely.
Yes.
Yep. 2.3 million is where we're at right now on a net present value basis after costs, after setting up an interest-bearing escrow.
Right.
Yes.
That's pretty doggone good.
Good.
So it's good. John, you've done a good job here. Thank you for being aware of this.
This is exactly the type of things, we have great people here in the county. We have great people that work in a variety of different departments of the county that really care. None of this was self-serving for any of them. They did it because it was the right thing to do, and they did well by the people to whom they serve. And I commend you, all of you that were involved in this, from you, Mr. Bond especially, who headed it up, Mr. Park, Mr. Hatch, our legal team. You guys have done a wonderful job here. This is a big deal. It's a huge deal, and appreciate you taking advantage of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? Thank you for that report. Mr. Bond, back to you. Any final comments before we take action?
Well, thank the commissioners for being involved as you are so much, and thank you for your support. Thank you. We're ready to petition you and see if you would consider accepting both of these resolutions. One for the Pleasant Valley Library to defease it, basically pay it off, and the other one is to start the process of refunding or refinancing the first bond in the library series.
Right. Yep. And we're going to handle them in the exact opposite. So we'll handle G1 first, which is Resolution 29, Commissioners. So with that, I'm ready to entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I'd make a motion that we approve item G1 on our action list, which is Resolution 29, for the issuance and sale of general obligation bonds not to exceed $28,700,000.
Thank you very much for that. We have a motion from Commissioner Jenkins
Second.
and a second from Commissioner Harvey. That's Resolution 29. That's a
Commissioner-
roll call vote.
Sorry. Commissioner Jenkins,
Proud to say aye.
Commissioner Harvey,
Aye.
and Chair Four.
Aye. Thank you. It's approved. Let's go to G2. We've already had the explanation on that unless there's any additional questions. from the commissioners. That would be Resolution 30.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
Motion to approve item 2 on our action item list this morning, authorizing the county outstanding sales tax revenue bonds, Series 2014B, from legally available monies of the county in related manners. That would be resolution number 30.
Thank you. We have a motion from Commissioner Harvey.
And a second.
Second, Commissioner Jenkins. It's also a roll call vote.
Commissioner Jenkins?
Aye.
Commissioner Harvey?
Aye?
Chair Faur?
Aye. Unanimous. You have approval on both those, John.
Awesome.
Again, thank you very much for your hard work and all the people involved with the bonds. I can just say that, and I worked with Mr. Hatch on signing those documents. That's a lot of paperwork that we signed, so.
It's a lot behind the scenes.
So, yeah, a lot of work that, putting the paperwork together and making sure we had the paperwork in order. So, great effort.
One more thing, Mr.
Yes,
Chair. Just to be clear, as this, we hope this gets watched another time, what that means is we just refinanced our house, so to speak, or a portion of our house at 1.1%. And for those who have a loan or a mortgage on their home, never heard of such rates. So that just puts just another attaboy to you. 1.1%. Good for you. Good for us.
I think the AAA bond rating provides the market the confidence to invest in our bonds because they're secure and they do not require as high of an interest rate, and that reflects in what we're talking about today.
We're a good risk when we're the top 2% of all counties in the United States.
And that's what it looks like, what we're talking about today. Yeah.
Yeah, great effort, unlike some counties that we see across the state, not to mention any particular counties, but we are far and above from a financial health standpoint, stand out in the state. So thank you very much. And that's a lot because of you and your team, John.
Thank you.
I want you to know that. Okay, G3 we've been asked to hold. Let's move to G4, which would be consideration and action on a development agreement between Levanta LLC, Los America Resources LLC, and Weber County to guide the development of storage units at approximately 4706 East, 2650 North, known as Clark Lane in the Eden area, otherwise known as Eden Boat and RV Storage. Mr. Charlie Ewert, time's yours.
Thank you, Commissioners. Give me just a moment while I pull up a presentation for you. Most of this presentation you've seen. I just wanted to go over some of the finer points because it's been a few weeks since we looked at this. Okay, so what you have before you is a rezone with the development agreement for a storage facility in the Eden area. You've seen the facility site. Generally where we're looking at is essentially right here, just to the west of the junior high school. In blue, the blue outline is the county road shed. The red outline is where the applicant's property is. As we were looking at the applicant's property, our original idea was to see if we could advocate for a rezone to the MV1 zone, which allows for storage units as a permitted use. But there was some concern from the public about what MV1 could turn into if the development agreement were to fail or if other things were to happen in the future. Because there are some uses in the MV1 that were a little bit less desirable, I think, for folks in the community. Where there's the CB2 zone, not too far away, that seems to be a fairly decent replacement zone. It still allows for storage units. And so flipping over to asking for the CV2 instead of the MV1 zone wasn't too much of a challenge, I think, for the applicant. Not to speak for the applicant, but there were 3 residential properties right in between where this property is and where the CB2 zone currently is. These are the only 3 residential properties. They're sandwiched between the school property. This is a canal. On the other side of the canal, it drops down pretty far to the riverbed, and then you've got the county road shops, road sheds here. For quite a while, we've had some concern from those 3 property owners about the activities happening at the road shed because it's very much a manufacturing or industrial style of use. And so rezoning the road property to the MV1 can help people who in the future invest in these properties to know what is going to be occurring there in the future, and have a little bit more of a sense of assurance as they do their due diligence. But also to provide a quality link and not spot zone, but provide continuity in zoning, we're suggesting to rezone all three of these properties to the CV2 zone to just go in there and kind of pick up that little peninsula there. I have spoken with both property owners of these two properties. It's been a little over a month now, but at the time they were very much in favor of the CV2 zone. They did want to see maybe a few more trees or some landscaping here along the county road shed. I said I'd mention it, but I didn't make any promises. And they'll probably continue to use the property as residential property for now, as legally established non-conforming right. And then at some point in the future, they'll have the CV2 zone where they can convert to some kind of a commercial use. So this is what it would look like, the zoning map, if the items on the agenda were approved today. We know that the general plan
Can you
advocates
go
for...
back just to
Sure.
that,
Yeah.
just so I can give us a chance to look at it?
Sure can, yeah.
Kind of went quick there.
So that's if the three items are approved today.
That's right.
Is that correct?
Yeah, well, the four items, you've got a development agreement on the agenda.
excuse me,
And
the-
then
yeah.
3 rezones.
Yeah.
Yep. And I broke it out that way just in case there's any static or desire to not approve one or the other.
Right.
You can make that decision and it wouldn't delay the other ones.
So Charlie, just so I'm clear, so agenda item G4 that we're on now deals with the development agreement.
That's right.
G5 would deal with the 4.7 acres.
Yep, which is the red bounded property right here.
The 3.35, I'm assuming, is the adjacent property to
Yep.
the west,
It's these, it's these 3 parcels here.
right? And then item 7 would be the county property.
That's right.
Got it. Everybody, so does that make sense, commissioners?
It does. The question I have here, Mr. Chair, is we talked at one time about making that county property a CV2, just because it made it a little more uniform, and I was of the opinion, and I could be getting this wrong, it's been a while since we talked, that the neighbors were a little more in favor of that, so that we took the heavy manufacturing out of there.
Okay. And I don't recall that specific part, but on item number 7, if you were to approve that but change it from MV1 to CV2, just as easy as that, and I can make that tweak on the ordinance before you guys sign it.
Well, maybe we can talk about that when we get to it
think
in
so.
a little more detail.
Now,
But I know at one time we sat and talked about making the county property a CV2 instead of an MV1 because it was a little more, not consumer friendly, a little more friendly to the neighbors
Exactly right.
in there
Okay.
and the people up and down the road.
That's exactly right, Commissioner. Now, my only question with that, it's currently an AV3 zone, but it's really being utilized as an MV1.
Right.
And so if we took that to a CV2, are we in conflict with our own zoning by doing a CV2? Now, just to be perfectly clear, as Commissioner Jenkins mentioned, we talked about a CV2 and looking at the possibility of relocating our sheds department because of the dust, et cetera, to a possible other location.
Yeah.
Again, something planning for the future.
Yeah, I think it's a valuable consideration, especially considering what could happen here. If we are going to move the sheds department, I think CV2 would be a little bit better for the property. Where right now the county road shed as a county storage facility is allowed in the AV3 zone, a public storage facility is allowed, it is legally established. So if you were to rezone it, it would fall under the grandfathering rights, just like the residences across the street would fall under that. If there's any concern about it operating in the same way moving forward in the CV2 zone, we could certainly get into the CV2 chapter and just make it clear that that is allowed as long as it's operated by a public entity.
Got it. Thank you for that clarification.
You bet.
Additional questions for Charlie?
I'd have one, Mr. Chair. Charlie, I know the answer to the question, but I want you to say it, please.
Okay.
If you'll go back to the presentation map. Thank you. In the proposed rezoned area, CV2, which is listed on top in red, I believe, as a colorblind person, that was my best stab at it.
It's true.
I think you described it as the term red.
It is reddish.
Is there any way possible that the applicant could change his mind and decide he's not going to put storage sheds there or something else and put in a gravel pit there?
No. No.
Excuse me?
No, it's not possible.
That's all I wanted to make sure.
In fact, making sure that everybody understands how that works. The development agreement is key here. What the development agreement does is it sets both expirations and terminations. At any point, if the applicant is in default of the agreement automatically terminates, which we wrote a clause in there that says all of the rights that were there under the AB3 zone then would be restored, and the rights that were authorized under the CV2 zone would be removed if there was a default or if it were to expire or any of those things. So the way this is intended to work, it gives them 10 years to build out their project, which they're fine with. They've got the financing and they're ready to go right away. Gives them 10 years to build the project out, and at the end of that period of time, or at the end of construction, whichever comes first, the agreement terminates. All the rights from the AB3 zone would then be restored, but anything that they've established, buildings on the ground, any uses they've established would then be allowed to continue on legally in the form that they are. Now, they can come back at that time and they could say, Commissioners, this agreement is about to expire. We're about to revert back to the AB3 zone.
10 years from now.
Yep, we are fully built out, but we'd like more rights, or we'd like to do something different, or we know that we've adopted maybe some new general plan. We want to do something alternative. Or we just want to keep the CV2 zone applied to the property. They could certainly do that, and you guys can tweak that agreement at that time, but they can't unilaterally do anything, change the use or anything like that, except for changing it back to the AB3 zone.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
One more question, Charlie. I really love trails, and I love what the people with the trails have done, especially with the Pineview Loop and Wolf Creek and everything else. This, I want to make sure that there's a beautiful potential pathway there. When the presenter came, or the applicant came here the last time that the presentation was made, we talked about making sure that there was in the development agreement some property held out for a prospective trail if it were to be developed on that side of that riverbed. Is that in the development agreement?
It is. It's one of the first things that they're going to be responsible for doing, is identifying with the county where that trail right-of-way should go. And we've established that it should be a 10-foot wide trail with 1-foot shoulder, so we're looking at about a 12-foot easement. And my anticipation is that we'll work with the applicant very soon, before the snow flies this year, to kind of go walk the property, figure out where this is going to be. It will be inside of the floodplain area, and so we'll take the engineers with us and try and figure out exactly how that needs to be configured or aligned in order to get the right configuration. Their only concern was that they didn't want that trail to be on the inside of their storage unit fence, and so their fence will just run right there at the western edge of their perimeter, and then we'll have from that fence to the river to figure out where we're going to put the trail.
We have that situation that exists at a lot of places on our trails.
We do.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Additional questions or comments?
Charlie, you just brought, or Commissioner Harvey just brought up a point there that I want to talk a little bit about. A 10-foot right-of-way with 1-foot shoulders.
Mm-hmm.
It's a frickin' trail. That's 12 feet wide. I call it, that's a road in my, out where I come from, 12 feet's a road. It's not a trail.
There's a tractor down it.
Yeah, is this a motorized trail?
No, the intention would be that it would be a paved pathway, similar to Pineview Loop pathway, which is 10 foot wide.
That just seems awfully big. Am I off there?
The standard that the county has adopted is 10 feet, so you get 5-foot travel lanes going either direction, and then you have unpaved shoulders on both sides. Sometimes you need a little bit more shoulder if there's a slope, but that is the asphalt standard that we've adopted.
Okay. All right, as long as it's standard. I really struggle. This ends up being in my mind so much, and I realize that everybody's agreed to this, so I don't want to make too big of a deal of it, but it almost ends up being a taking. And you understand that, Commissioner.
I understand that very clearly.
In that industry.
Sometimes I struggle with, as much as we've seen trails be a benefit to the valley, I still struggle with the idea that we kind of hold a gun to people's heads to make sure that they conform, so.
And
but
commissioners,
I'll
to-
bite my tongue.
In an attempt to waylay that concern, this is a voluntary agreement. They have volunteered to do this. I mean, they know that they're getting CV2 zoning, they know they're getting the development that they want, and so they wanted to give back to the community, and this is the way that they did so.
Understand that it's voluntary, but it's voluntary or don't do it.
That's right.
All right, thank you very much, Charlie, I appreciate it.
Thank you for that, Charlie. Additional questions or comment, commissioners? So we are dealing, is that, you conclude your presentation,
I
Charlie?
had a couple more slides, but I did want to point out that we are asking for some architectural standards. You'll see them on
Right.
the last couple of pages in the development agreement. And then finally, I just wanted to make sure it was clear, we had these 4 different decisions on the agenda as we have discussed them, and then ultimately the different decisions that are available to you today.
Thank you for that. I actually took some time last night, more time than I anticipated, reading that development agreement, and I can say it's very thorough. I think that the county, at least in my opinion, from a real estate perspective, is very much protected. I think the citizens in the valley will be happy with that development agreement, knowing that the architectural standards, some of that you just pointed out, will be adhered to. And more than anything, it's conforming. One thing that makes sense, I brought up to Mr. Grover before, is that consistent planning and zoning should be consistent. You shouldn't jump from an MV1 to an AV3 when you have surrounding uses that are commercial or manufacturing. This allows us to do it.
Right.
It makes no sense that somebody next to a commercial or manufacturing is going to go ahead and put in multi-million-dollar homes. So let's be realistic about it. Let's zone for the use of the ground. Let's make sure that the property owners have the right to decide what they want to see happen on that property. So,
Very good.
so let's talk about the development agreement. If
Well, hold on, can we go back to those, the picture you had, that right there? You know, for the area up there and what has been developed up there and what is kind of continuing to be developed, I like these a lot. And if the developers agreed to this kind of a style, if I was one of those homes next to this and I was living there, I would be very happy with this. I'd be happy to have development that looked this way. It's down over the hill, the brow of the hill there, so it can't be readily seen. It's going to be, I think this is going to be a wonderful development. I just tell you, now that's my opinion. And they say, whenever you do this kind of stuff, they say, well, would you live next to it? And my answer is yes. If I had to live next to those, in those 2 homes next to it, I'd be very proud to live next to something that looked this good.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd only hope that we'd adopted this 10 or 15 years ago to take some of our storage units we have on our main thoroughfares that don't look anything like this, that we have compounded problems with 25-year-old RV sitting out as people come into our area. So this is a move in the right direction.
You'll see more of this coming down the pipeline over the next couple of months as well.
You know, understanding, especially where this is agreed to by the developer, I think we all understand that, you know, our prime thoroughfares are there for other than storage units. And unfortunately, we haven't seen that, at least in the Huntsville area. So, anyway, enough said on that. Commissioners, further comments, questions? If not, I entertain a motion.
I'd make a motion, Mr. Chair, that we approve item G5, which is the...
G4 or G5? G4 is a development agreement.
Yeah, G4. I'm sorry, I jumped up one. For the development agreement between Levanta LLC, Las America Resources LLC, and Weaver County to develop this RV and boat storage.
Thank you. We have a motion from Commissioner Jenkins on item G4.
I'll second.
And we have a second from Commissioner Jim Harvey. This is a voice vote, so I'm going to place the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion carries. So G4 is approved. Let's go now, Commissioner Jenkins, to G5.
All right. I'd make a motion that we go, that we approve item G5 on there, which is the ordinance amending Weaver County zoning map.
Thank you. So that would be ordinance, G5 would be ordinance 14.
14.
Thank you. We have a motion?
Second.
And we have a second. Commissioner Harvey.
Commissioner Jenkins,
Aye.
Commissioner Harvey,
Aye.
and Chair Four.
Aye. Motion carries unanimous. Thank you. Let's go to agenda item G6, which is consideration and action on the ordinance amending Weber County zoning map to rezone approximately 3.35 acres of land located at 4708 East, 4736 East, and 4770 East, 2650 North, Clark Lane, from AV3 to CV2. That's just a continuation of that plat that you see on the screen. Questions, commissioners? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
Motion to approve the ordinance amending Weber County zoning map to rezone approximately 3.35 acres of the land located at 4708 East, 4736 East, and 4770 East, and approximately 2650 North, or Clark Lane, from the AV3 zone to the CV2 zone.
Thank you. We have
Ordinance 15, I believe it is.
exactly right. We have a motion from Commissioner Harvey, and do we have a second?
You do have a second for me.
And we have a second, Commissioner Jenkins. That's G5 Ordinance 15.
Commissioner Jenkins? Aye. Commissioner Harvey?
Aye.
Chair Four.
Aye. Motion carries unanimous. G6 is approved. Let's now move to G7, which would be Ordinance 16. So this is the one that we might want to have some discussion on, commissioners. So this deals with the county site, current site, currently in an AV3.
Right.
But for all intents and purposes being used as an MV1. There has, as Commissioner Jenkins very thoughtfully pointed out, there has been some discussion that it might be proper to, again, be consistent with our zoning to move this to a CV2 versus an MV1. Discussions to that action item, commissioners?
Mr. Chair, the only reason I think that we should consider this is because it flows as a rezoned area. It matches everything that's around it now. And our intention is to eventually get out of there someday, hopefully not too far in the future. And as we do that, it would soften that area and take it out of manufacturing and would put it into just a commercial use. And once again, you say as a neighbor, would you want that? And that is something I would prefer. If I lived in one of those homes down there, I would prefer that, and I think it's in keeping with what we're trying to create down there. Is that fair to say?
I agree 100%.
Trying to create down there.
Uh-huh.
Charlie, would you pull the map up again?
You flip over.
And if I might, Commissioner Jenkins, I think it makes the county more transparent for those that look at property around us to really look at the zone versus what it's being used for.
Agree.
So, anyway, go ahead, Charlie. Commissioner Harvey, floor is yours.
Yeah, this is, you know, I'm sitting here right now in my mind thinking what's good for the goose is good for the gander. I've heard that before in my life. And I see that creek bed going through that bottom tip of our property. And I realize there is some property between the red zone and our property there. I don't know that now is the time.
We should explain that to me. What you just said. There is some property between. I don't understand that.
Well, it looks to me, I'm following the creek bed, not the lines.
Oh, okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, now it does.
Sorry.
I didn't understand.
Thank
what
you
you're talking about
for
there.
asking that. I'm just following the creek, not the property line. And as that comes through there, I'm just sitting there thinking, boy, you know, if we're really concerned about trails, which I am, I'd like to see a continuance of that. Active transportation role as we work hard to tie up Old Town and New Town Eden, although there could be a little bit of a change. I don't want to make that contingent on this passing or failing right now, but I certainly want to make the comment and bring it to the attention so that it's part of public record. Because there's a lot that goes into it. I mean, we're a long ways off from any of that, but I think it makes it more fair. It lightens that load, and then I need to, I think as a position of responsibility, you know, what we're doing up there, Sean, I'll ask you, is what we're doing up there, will that be compliant with that CV2 zone, or are we grandfathered in? Those are my questions.
Commissioners, right now I believe we are approved as a governmental use. So, Charlie, is that governmental use still in the CV2 zone?
That's the part I don't know, but
So that's what we
we
would
are
have to look
legally
at.
established right now
Correct.
as a governmental use. So you change the zone, we will be grandfathered.
The use would stay, but if we ever change that use, then
Thank you for educating me on that. I appreciate that. And then also, then that answers my next question, which was, I think we lease a piece of that property, and so that all just stays grandfathered in.
that's a good question. And I would probably have to consult our legal team about how that lease would be affected, because it's not technically a governmental use.
So I'm thinking about today and thinking about tomorrow while we're making this decision. So I'm just bringing up the questions.
Well, is our, Charlie, isn't our lease, or Sean, in the MV1 zone now?
As far as I understand it, the lease is in the AV3 zone.
So the lease is in the AV3.
Correct.
Okay. So that's part of the AV3. Okay. So they're actually we're in non-compliance.
That's
with-
the whole point.
Well,
Isn't that right, Charlie?
Can I refrain from answering?
No?
I'm not sure that the uses right there are in compliance with the AV3 zone.
Yeah.
For our tenant. I mean, obviously, we have government right to use it for what we want, just like a school district.
Right.
But yeah, I'm not completely sure that gives us the right with our tenant.
I'm just asking
Commissioner?
questions, yeah.
So I would prefer we come in compliance, personally.
Me too.
So commissioners, you could potentially come into compliance if you were to rezone that portion of the property to the MV1 zone. I know for sure that is allowed in the MV1 zone, what they're doing there. It might be allowed in the CV2, but I've got to go and do the research. It's not something I've looked into yet.
I'm going back to what's good for the goose is good for the gander. That statement, we just did all this approving of those other things, and I'm just trying to be fair.
Well, the only reason you consider this, may I?
Yep, go ahead.
The only reason you consider this is because it's open and before us, right now.
Right.
So right now, we could make that change, and it'd be clean and neat. We could tie this whole thing up, put a bow around it, and whistle Dixie. And I'd kind of like to do that.
Or Bonnie, or Mary, or any other, whistling.
Well, and I'm in favor of making sure that is complete. The only thing that I'm not completely sure of right now is how that would impact our tenant with the CV2 zone.
so commissioners, that lease is up, I believe, October 31st of this year. There is the possibility of renewing for one more year under our current agreement. But we can look into that. We can also look into the AV3 zone at those uses and just see if the use that they're conducting right now, which is storage of landscaping products, is allowed
Right.
somehow. But let us do that research.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I'd make a motion that we hold item 7 for now till we get that research done, as much as I'd like to wrap it up and put a bow on it. And, you know, I go either way right this minute, but I think, are we in a hurry, or what am I missing here? Again, I'm just trying to be taught, but
No, I don't think we're in any kind of a hurry. We figured we'd kind of put all this together since we're talking about the area.
good, thank you.
But I listed it separately just in case something like this came
You
up.
know, that's up to you two, though. I mean, I don't know.
That's a motion, right?
I'd make that in the form of a motion to
I
continue
actually-
the meeting on.
I actually appreciate that motion. I think that's a proper course action this time, if we have a second.
I want to speak to that.
Go ahead.
Well,
Charlie, how long would it take you to go up and look that up?
I can have an answer for you guys by the end of the day, I think. It just depends on
How
what's in
about
the
in 5
lease.
minutes?
I could do my best to get 5 minutes, maybe 10. It's a big chapter. I have to scroll through a whole chapter there.
You know, this is not rocket science, what
It's
we're
not.
doing here. This is pretty standard. And since the thing is open and in front of us right now, I'd like to, well, I'm not going to vote on that motion, but I'd like to make an alternative motion to take a 10-minute recess.
Well, we go into a public hearing, so we can always bring this back at the end of the public hearing.
Listen, let make this easier. I'll rescind my motion if you'll allow me to replace it.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion that we hold item 7 until after our public hearing and then hear it again immediately following today's public hearing based on the information that Mr. Ebert gives us.
Thank you. So the motion is to move agenda item G7 from its current position to H after the public hearing and discuss it at that point in time, if that gives Mr. Ebert a chance to give us some additional information.
It should give me enough time. I'll let you know by the end of the meeting if it doesn't.
I'd like to put a little pressure on him. That's
Okay, we have that motion. We have a second.
you do for that, yes.
All right, we have a motion from, or a second, excuse me, from Commissioner Jenkins. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. That has been put on hold till time certain, whenever that is, after our public hearing. So with that, Commissioners, I would entertain a motion to adjourn our public meeting and go into a public hearing.
So move.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Do we need to go to roll call on that public hearing, Fatima? Thank you.
So we are now in, we took a vote on that, right? All right. So with that, I'm going to entertain a motion to saunter for 5 minutes.
Saunter, a second for sauntering.
Okay, I'm going to second that. We're going to saunter under house rules for 5 minutes.
I love that. Those rules. Aye.
Bill, do you have an iPhone charger?
public hearing. We took a motion to go from a public meeting to public hearing. So with that, for those listening online, this public hearing is to consider and take action on a proposal to amend the following sections of Weber County Code, which would be sections 102-1-5 and 102-5 regarding rezoning procedures and legislative amendments. This proposal will also create a new chapter regarding development agreements, which would be ZTA 2018-05. Mr. Steve Burton, thank you for your patience. The time's yours.
Hello, good morning, Commissioners. Your planning staff has prepared an ordinance that amends the county's rezoning procedures. This is a county-initiated ordinance. You may remember towards the end of last year there was a rezone where the Planning Commission had a unanimous decision to deny the rezone. Under our existing rezoning procedures, if the Planning Commission is unanimous in its decision on a legislative item such as a rezone, then it takes a unanimous decision of the County Commission to overturn that decision. As you're all aware, that isn't really in line with what state code says regarding County Commission, which has the full legislative authority for a county. So that's the main reason for this change, is we're getting rid of that section that gives the Planning Commission some legislative authority. There are a few other small changes. We're clarifying a few sentences that weren't exactly clear. We're eliminating some redundancies. We're also adding a section for development agreements. Nothing in that section obligates the commission to enter into a development agreement. It's completely at your discretion. We wanted to add that into the code so that when we do get rezones, we can refer developers to what the county is going to be asking for, what we're going to be looking at if we do ask for a development agreement. Both of your planning commissions have recommended approval of these changes.
So they were aware of this, and they
Yes.
have been brought aware of this, I'm assuming.
That's correct.
And what this does, it brings us compliance with state statute, which obviously does not give legislative authority to planning commissions. It was never the intent of the legislature to do that. And how that slipped through Weber County remains to be seen. But
Right.
anyway, so what this does, it cures some issues, compliance issues, and takes the planning commission basically out of harm's way for legislative actions that they weren't intended to make. With that, commissioners, let's go to public comments first, see if there's anybody in the public that would like to comment on this. Do we have anybody online, Shelley or Stacy? Not for comments?
None, Shelley Hallisey.
None from Shelley? Okay. Commissioners, questions, comments, or action? Commissioner Jenkins?
No comment. I'm ready for action, but we generally go out of the public hearing to do that, right?
So.
Right,
we-
so
we-
if that's
So
the
the
case.
action would be to, if there's no other comments on this or questions for our presenter, then the correct motion would be to adjourn our public hearing and go back into our public meeting, which I'm,
So moved.
okay.
Hold on. Was I asleep at the wheel here when you asked for public comment?
I asked for public comment. I asked for anything on Zoom.
So, okay, let me wake back up and then, yeah,
We're,
second of.
we're through sauntering, just.
Yes.
Yeah. But, we always had problems with,
Shuffling off to Buffalo.
we always had problem with the Senate that way too, so don't think you're lying. Okay, thank you for that. All right, so we do have a motion, I believe, from Commissioner Jenkins.
right.
And we have a second to adjourn our public hearing and reconvene as a public meeting. And all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. We're now in a public meeting. Now we can take action on our public hearing, which was the proposal to amend the sections of code just described.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
I would make a motion that we approve the amendment to Weber County Code 102-1-5 and 102-5 as presented to us today in our agreement ZTA 2018-05.
Thank you for that. We have a motion, Commissioner Jenkins,
Second.
and we have a second by Commissioner Harvey. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Hold on.
Oh, this is a roll call.
Did I get that right? They're looking at me like I missed that.
The file number for planning purposes, I believe, is 2018-05. But I think Fatima probably has the ordinance number for you.
Yes, it's 16.
Okay, this would be ordinance 16.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Okay, Commissioner Jenkins,
Aye?
Commissioner Harvey,
Aye.
Chair Froer,
Aye. Motion carries unanimous. Thank you. Let's go now to our revised.
Hold on. That's not correct, what we did. That ordinance 16, that was a rezone. And that's not what the public hearing we just did.
That's the one we held, isn't it? The one we held. We held that one, that would have been 16.
Yeah, this is actually H5, ordinance 17.
But we held that other one until Charlie comes up.
So just for clarification, this next action will be ordinance 17. So what we did is we basically
We switched them.
switched them. So
Okay,
we
well,
take it.
the reason I said that, Fatima, is it says right there, 102-5.
Because I didn't know you guys were going to be
Yeah,
switching.
okay.
So we're just taking the ordinance in
All
order
right.
versus the agenda.
I try to stay on top of this, that's why I called.
Thank you for that clarification. So moving now to our revised
We didn't
agenda.
vote. We didn't vote.
Yep, she just called for the vote, right?
Yeah, but I stopped it, didn't I?
I think you did.
Yeah, I
Okay,
stopped
so
it.
let's,
So it was I think I, then you said I, then hold on. So I think just maybe call for that
Call
vote
it
again.
let's do that again, just so we're clear.
All right, Commissioner Jenkins,
This will
Aye.
be ordinance 16.
Yeah,
Okay.
aye.
Commissioner Harvey,
I.
and Chair Froer.
Aye. So
There you
that
go.
does carry unanimously. Now we'll go to our revised agenda, which will be dealing with that would be G7, consideration action on an ordinance amending the Lake County zoning map to rezone 5.24 acres of land located approximately 4735 east, 2650 north, Clark Lane, from AV3 to MV1. We asked Charlie to research that and come back to us with the answer. Charlie?
Hi, Commissioners. Thank you for the time to look into that, and sorry for the confusion. We did actually talk with legal, and we consulted with the code and each other. We do believe that because the county is allowed in the AV3 zone to have a public storage facility, the county has the ability to lease out its right of storage to others. And so we have done that. We've leased out that right to storage to another. And so there would be that grandfathered right if the whole thing was rezoned to the CV2 zone. There is a little bit more research that we're going to do into that just to make sure we're 100% on legal footing. But after consulting with Mr. Crockett, we're comfortable with moving forward with the rezone if you guys want to do that. And if it turns out that in a very slim chance there is risk legally, we'll come back and ask for a recall vote next week.
So this is kind
Hopefully
of
that won't
this is kind of a down zoning, then, isn't it?
It would be an upzone from AV3 to CV2, but it's not the upzone from AV3 to MV1.
And with that CV2, just making sure there's no possibility of anybody coming in, buying that from us and putting a gravel pit there.
No, not under the CV2 zone. MV1 it would be.
Love covering that topic. But it's always nice to hear that coming from you, and that's, I think that's responsible.
Thank you
Thank
for
you,
that
Mr. Chair.
clarification, Commissioner. So the issue ahead would be agenda item G7, but would be ordinance number 17 is what we're dealing with, Commissioner. So actions, comments?
I'm ready to.
Go ahead, Commissioner
Okay.
Jenkins.
I would make a motion then that we rezone 5.24 acres on Clark Lane at approximately 4735 east, 2650 north, from AV3 to CV2. And this is the county property which we own and which we lease, both pieces. And that makes that zoning in there consistent. It gives the people who owns the properties adjacent to us stability on what they know they're going to be getting, and I feel really good about that. So I'd make that motion.
Thank you for that motion from Commissioner Jenkins.
When you say, sorry if I may, Mr.
ahead.
Chair, when you say we lease, you mean we are the lessor, not the leasee.
That's true, lessor.
Correct.
Thank you. And with that clarification of lessor, I'll second.
And we have a second from Commissioner Harvey. Let's do the roll call vote.
Commissioner Jenkins?
So this is ordinance 17
17.
now.
Ordinance 17.
Yes, I vote aye.
Commissioner Harvey?
Aye.
And Chair Brewer?
Aye. Motion carries unanimous. Thank you very much. Thanks, Charlie.
Thank you very much.
That was a work in progress, but we got through it. So, and I think that was the proper decision to make, quite frankly, to the CV2. Okay, gentlemen, we are now at a part of our agenda
Not a hurry.
for commissioner comments. Open for comments.
You know, if I may,
Yes.
just quickly, you know, I spent some time this last Saturday morning with Washington Terrace City. In as much as last week we were with South Ogden and Riverdale, or South Ogden and Upper Uinta, with Washington Terrace. For the most part, the guys had, their spirits were high, but they were still hauling material in like crazy. The material that's, the site is 2 or 3 football fields full of debris that's 14, 15, 16 feet high. It's just tremendous, and it's still not done. As I drive there through the south, early this morning I took a drive through the terrace, and there's still a lot to do. So I encourage citizenry, if you feel so inclined, to give of yourself. There are those who don't have family members or neighbors that took care of them like they did the others, and there's still some great work to do. So I'm grateful for what you've done, Sean and Commissioner Jenkins, John Watson, Randy Molding, to help accommodate not just the green waste, but also the root balls or the tree balls that are coming in that are just massive now, and they're hauling those out to Little Mountain for a reduced fee. Big deal. And also this morning, it's amazing what you learn when you drive around in the morning. And power crews and a lot of guys were dispatched all over the road, still hauling poles and getting people up and substantiated through the county. So I'm just grateful for all the work that's gone on. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. So question I have, maybe you know this, maybe Sean does. Do we have power restored? I haven't had a conversation with Mr. Steve Rush lately. Do we have power restored 100%, or are we still? Do you know, Sean?
Last I heard, there may have been a few pockets out, but 99%
Okay.
was restored.
That's good to hear. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Commissioner. Great job, by the way, in helping those communities.
It's great.
Appreciate it. Commissioner Jenkins, comments?
So the other day I'm standing at the sink, and my wife says, "Look at that right there, go by." And it was a big Dodge truck with a Cummins engine in it and a fifth wheel trailer behind it. And on that fifth wheel trailer was a root ball that had to be, it hung off both sides, and those trailers are 9 feet wide, so it's 10 or 11 feet wide, and it was considerably taller than it was wide. It was a massive root ball. And I thought, man, that guy's hauling that root ball out to the county right now. It was just huge. When you look at those, they're heavy enough that a front end loader can't put them on. They have to be craned on to a trailer. Just massive. And you can see, even though the cleanup is pretty much done, the root balls, they will be for months to come as people get out of this situation they're in. And it's a tough deal. It's hard to become involved in that because, Commissioner Harvey and I had a picture somebody had sent us of a root ball, and right in the middle of that root ball was a sprinkler line that went through there. And you know the minute you move that any further that sprinkler line is going to break. Well, you have gas lines, you have water lines, you have electrical lines, you have all kinds of other lines that are in people's lots. And so it's hard. This is hard when it gets to this point. So I agree with Commissioner Harvey. It was really good to be involved with that, and I think all in all, we've done a pretty good job. Number two, I want you to know I appreciate you accommodating me on these kind of deals when we get down to this rezoning and these ordinances. You kind of work your way through them, and that's what we do. You know, this is like being back on a city council a little bit. That's the way you do on cities. You you try to see where you've got support and what you can do to move this along, and I feel very comfortable about where we went today. And I think we sent a message to the Upper Valley that we're going to try to be consistent in what we do here. We're going to try to allow people their freedoms to use their properties within the zones that they're in freely, and do the very best we can to help their private property rights. So I appreciate both of you working with us on that.
Yeah, thank you. And, you know, thank you, both Commissioner Harvey and Jenkins. This rezoning issue has not been an easy one. In fact, I think we first heard this a month or so ago, and we've had numerous meetings on it. But at the end of the day, after research and being consistent, and I agree with you, Commissioner Jenkins, even though it wasn't an easy decision, it was the right decision.
Yeah.
And I appreciate both of you getting into the weeds on this zoning. It's not always the easiest issues, especially sometimes during election years to face, but it is what it is, and we owe it to those property owners up there to do the right thing, which I believe we firmly did. With that, I'd entertain a final motion.
So move.
We have a motion,
Second.
and we have a second. All those in favor to adjourn, say aye.
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 Chair votes aye, we're adjourned. Thank you very much. For those people listening online, for those people with us today in the chamber, we're adjourned.